It's a new month and time to have a look at Spellbinders' large die of the month. This is an absolutely gorgeous die set with some really neat features that makes it super easy to put together. I began by using the large heart die to die cut both ivory, cardstock, and black foam. I embossed the heart with beveled diamonds embossing folder. I didn't realize how much of the heart was going to be covered, or else I actually would have skipped this step. The die set comes with 2 floral sprays, which I've die cut from very dark green cardstock. I'm using a Versamark ink pad and just catching the edges of the leaves lightly, and I'll cover it with gold embossing powder and melt it with my heat tool. I've also used these dies to cut some black sheet foam, which I will stack the sprays on eventually. There are separate dies for the flowers so that they can be layered onto the floral spray. The floral spray is debossed, so it shows not only where the flower will go, but anything that is layered on, making this super easy to pull together. For this little flower, I'm able to easily identify that center that's going to be adhered to it. For this larger flower, the debossing shows that there is a layer of flower petals that will sit on top of a flower center. This makes it super easy to not only identify which die cuts you need to layer on, but where they will go. And for the petals that will sit on top, I'm going to use some low mount foam squares to adhere it. For this next flower, you can see that there's going to be 2 layered flower centers. This is so user-friendly, it takes all the guesswork out of where those little die cuts go. And once all the layers have been added onto the flowers, then it's just a matter of taking those die cuts and popping them onto the flower spray. For the flowers that slightly overlap another one, I'll adhere them using the low profile foam squares. The others will be adhered directly to the spray with liquid adhesive. The flowers have been die cut from a combination of dark pink, light pink, and red cardstock, and I'm using matte gold cardstock for the flower centers. Now that the spray has been assembled, it's going to be adhered to a black foam die cut of the flower spray. And I go all the way around the perimeter, making sure that those leaves are aligned to one another. I've used the same dark green cardstock for my card front, which measures 4 1/8 inches by 5 3/8 inches. Again, I'm using my Versamark ink pad to lightly rub the edges of the cardstock, which are coated with gold embossing powder. Then go in with the paintbrush just to soften up some of the edges. To minimize warping, I let my heat tool come to its maximum temperature before I apply the heat. I'm going for a vintage Victorian look, so just to really take it up a notch, I'm going to lightly sprinkle the panel with powder, and then using my heat tool underneath the panel, I'll apply the heat until it melts. And as I'm doing this, you can actually see those specks brightening up as they melt. The 2 floral sprays together cover the heart completely. And you can see how the second floral spray just neatly tucks into the other one. The die set comes with 2 separate word dies to create the sentiment. I've die cut them from both matte gold cardstock and black foam. Sentiments are quite fine, and so it can be a little bit tricky to stack them. To make it easier, I leave the foam die cut in the backing, removing just the centers of the letters. When the word is die cut into the foam, it actually leaves an impression. This makes it very easy to align the cardstock one to it. I then apply the glue to the foam die cut and then easily line up the cardstock one to it. Don't want them to shift out of alignment from one another, so I do set it aside to dry completely before I remove the excess foam. A craft pick is helpful to get into those areas that are tighter. The card front is adhered to an A2 size top folding black card base. Thin layer of glue is applied to the back of the sentiment and it will catch the high points of the flowers. I've used just the edges of the floral spray dies to die cut some of those leaves, which I'm going to trim off. The leaves will be lightly touched to the Versamark ink and then dipped into the gold embossing powder. I don't want to burn my fingers, so I'm using tweezers to hold those leaves as I melt the embossing powder. When the heart was attached to the card front, I made sure not to place any adhesive close up to the edge so that I would be able to tuck the leaves underneath it. The card is finished up with some pretty gold foil half pearls, which are arranged around the leaves that are on the card base. That completes my version of a Victorian Valentines card featuring Spellbinders' gorgeous large die of the month. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I appreciate your visit.